Mount Everest is often called the ultimate test of human endurance, a place where skill, preparation, and respect for nature mean everything. But not every death on the world's highest mountain comes from unavoidable storms or sheer bad luck. Some tragedies happen because of shockingly poor decisions, ignored warnings, reckless confidence, or simple human stubbornness. In this video, we're diving into 5 of the most disturbing deaths on Mount Everest.
I quite literally mean that. There was nearly nothing left. No bodies, no tents, or supplies. Nothing. Unfortunately, Gerard and 5 of the 6 Sherpas that were with him would all be killed, and they would never be seen again.
September 9th, 1974, was supposed to be the moment everything finally clicked. After weeks of waiting out relentless monsoon storms, the French team saw a narrow window of opportunity. The sky had cleared enough to spark hope. Winds had eased. Visibility returned. Camps were stocked. Ropes were in place. For the first time in days, Everest looked almost inviting. The dream felt close, dangerously close. They weren't just aiming for the summit. They were attempting something far bolder. A direct line up the West Ridge, never before climbed. A route designed to bypass the chaos and constant danger of the Khumbu icefall below. A cleaner line, a smarter line, a line that could make history. But Everest had already loaded its gun. Days of heavy rain and thick snowfall had stacked instability across the western face. The mountain absorbed it silently, layering danger on top of danger. Seracs loomed overhead, towering blocks of ice, deceptively still yet ready to fall. Fresh powder clung to ancient ice, fragile and unstable. Every step carried an unspoken question. How long before this all comes down? They knew it was risky. Experienced climbers always do. They just didn't know how little time they had left. That evening, around 7:10 p.m., the mountain made its decision. Without warning, a massive avalanche ripped loose above 7,000 meters. There was no gradual buildup, no second chance. It wasn't a slide, it was an explosive wall of ice and snow, accelerating with unstoppable force. The roar was deafening, like the mountain itself tearing apart. In seconds, Camps Y and 2 were gone. Not damaged, not partially buried, gone. Tents vanished as if they had never existed. Supplies scattered, ropes snapped. Men inside their shelters didn't stand a chance. No time to unzip a tent, grab boots, or run. The avalanche swept bodies and gear into crevasses beneath tons of moving snow. Among the victims was Gérard Devoisseau, the expedition leader and one of Chamonix's most respected guides. Known for his calm judgment and technical skill, he was the kind of man climbers trusted with their lives. Alongside him were Sherpas Pemba Dorje, Nawang Lutuk, Lakpa, and Sanu Wangal. Down at Camp Wand, Nima Wangchu was also buried. 6 lives ended almost instantly. By the time the mountain fell silent again, Everest's death toll had climbed to 36. Above the devastation, Claude Anstey survived, alone at Camp the Thru. At first, he didn't understand what had happened. The radio was silent. The lights below were gone. The camps that should have been there simply weren't. At base camp, distant thunder rolled through the valley, echoing unnaturally long against the cliffs. Climbers realized something was wrong before broken voices on the radio confirmed the horror. No rescue was possible. Night had fallen. The slopes remained unstable. Any attempt to reach the debris would have been suicidal. Only one body was ever recovered. The rest remained somewhere inside Everest, entombed in ice, folded into crevasses, slowly becoming part of the mountain itself. The expedition ended the next morning. No summit push, no heroic final effort, just stunned climbers dismantling the remnants of their camp beneath a mountain that had spoken loud and clear. The West Ridge Direct, a route imagined as a safer, more elegant alternative to the deadly Khumbu icefall, revealed itself as a different kind of killer. Quieter, less traveled, just as merciless. What lingers isn't just the avalanche, it's the timing, the optimism, the belief that a brief break in the storm meant the danger had passed. Everest didn't need recklessness that day. It didn't need a mistake. It only needed patience. And when the mountain finally moved, it delivered a brutal lesson. On Everest, ambition counts for nothing when gravity calls the shots.
Year was 1933. and Maurice Wilson was a man with a mission. Believing that he had a duty to impart to humanity his message of physical healing through spiritual meditation and fasting,
Maurice Wilson's story doesn't begin like a typical Everest tragedy. It unfolds like a blend of blind faith, wartime trauma, and a reckless dream that spiraled into one of the most bizarre deaths the mountain has ever seen. Born into comfort in Bradford, Wilson should have inherited his family's wool business, but the First World War changed everything. At just 18, he went to France, fought on the front lines, and earned the Military Cross for standing alone against a German assault. When he returned home, he was broken, physically, mentally, and spiritually. For years, he wandered the world, seeking a peace that always eluded him, haunted by old wounds, and sinking deeper into a loneliness no wealth or travel could fix. Then, in 1932, something shifted. After a mysterious ritual of prayer and extreme fasting, taught, he claimed, by a healer no one else had ever met, Wilson believed he had been reborn. His sickness disappeared. His faith in God and in the power of fasting became absolute. He became convinced he had a divine mission. And that mission, in his mind, was Mount Everest. Wilson didn't just want to climb Everest. He believed reaching the summit would prove that his spiritual methods could heal the world. It didn't matter that he had never climbed a real mountain or barely knew how to fly. Undeterred, he bought a tiny de Havilland Moth airplane, named it Everest, and learned to fly with great difficulty. Even after crashing it during practice, even after the British Air Ministry banned him from flying, even after friends begged him to stop, his obsession never wavered. Against all odds, he pulled off the impossible, flying across continents, dodging authorities, bypassing fuel restrictions, and landing in India with just enough fuel to roll onto the strip. It was the first miracle of his doomed mission. When the authorities confiscated his plane, Wilson simply changed tactics. He slipped into Darjeeling, enlisted 3 Sherpas willing to help, disguised himself as a mute monk, and illegally entered Tibet on foot. By April 1934, he stood at the base of Everest, alone, untrained, carrying minimal equipment, and yet utterly convinced that God and fasting would carry him to the top. What followed reads like a mixture of courage, delusion, and heartbreaking naivety. Wilson stumbled across the Rongbuk Glacier with no glacier training, constantly losing his way. He found crampons but discarded them. He believed footprints from the previous year would still guide him. He believed the mountain would simply open a path. Each attempt pushed him closer to physical collapse. Snowblind, starving, limping from old wounds, he pressed on. The Sherpas begged him to turn back. He refused. In one of his final diary entries, he wrote, "This will be a last effort, and I feel successful." That unwavering conviction made his journey inspiring and ultimately fatal. On May 31st, 1934, he wrote his last entry. "Off again, gorgeous day. What happened after that remains unknown." The Sherpas left when he didn't return. A year later, in 1935, an expedition discovered his body at the foot of the North Col, lying beside the shredded remains of his tent. He had died alone, likely from exhaustion or starvation, just yards from where help could have reached him.
Nepal lies in the Himalayas, dominated by the world's tallest mountain, Mount Everest. The quake sent a mountain of ice and snow directly onto the base camp there, where hundreds had gathered in preparation for the climb to the summit.
On the morning of April 25th, 2015, Everest Base Camp buzzed with its usual energy. Tents flapped lightly in the cold air. Climbers rested, laughed, checked their gear, and sent messages home. For many, it was the calm before the push to the summit. The Khumbu icefall still lay ahead, the most dangerous part of the climb. But at base camp, life felt safe. It always does. Then, just before noon, the ground betrayed them. At first, it felt like vertigo. The earth rolled beneath their boots, not in slow waves, but in violent, sickening motion. Cooking pots rattled. Ice walls groaned. Climbers dropped to their knees as the glacier beneath them shifted like water. This wasn't a storm. This wasn't an avalanche. This was an earthquake. 200 kilometers away, Nepal had been struck by a 7.8 magnitude tremor, and Everest felt every second. Moments later, a deep roar rolled up from the western sun, growing impossibly loud. Climbers looked up in time to see it, a massive slab of snow and ice breaking from Pumori's flanks. What followed wasn't a slide. It was a wall of destruction, accelerating straight toward base camp. There was nowhere to run. The avalanche hit with hurricane force, blasting tents across the glacier like paper, burying people in seconds, hurling bodies and equipment into the ice. Some climbers were thrown dozens of meters. Others were crushed where they stood. The air turned white with snow and silence, broken only by screams, alarms, and the frantic sound of bare hands digging through debris. When it ended, base camp was unrecognizable. At least 22 people were dead within hours. By the day's end, the total reached 24, the deadliest single day in Everest's history. Experience meant nothing. Sherpas, expedition leaders, seasoned climbers, and first-timers alike were swept aside. One moment, they were alive, planning dinner or a summit window. The next, they were gone. Above, the nightmare wasn't over. The earthquake had triggered multiple avalanches across the mountain. Ladders in the Khumbu icefall were ripped away. Routes vanished. Camps higher up were cut off completely. More than 100 climbers were stranded above base camp with no safe way down, watching avalanches thunder endlessly through the icefall below. The next morning, helicopters battled thin air and brutal weather, airlifting the wounded in waves. Dozens suffered broken spines, crushed limbs, traumatic brain injuries. Some didn't survive the flight to medical aid. Others were trapped for days, supplies dwindling, while aftershocks continued to rattle the mountain. Survivors later described the scene in haunting terms, like a war zone, like a nuclear blast, total desolation. The most chilling truth, Everest hadn't done anything climbers normally fear. No storm, no misstep, no human error. The danger came from far beyond the mountain, from the earth itself. Nothing could protect them. The 2015 climbing season never recovered. For the first time in 41 years, not a single person reached the summit in the spring. The mountain stood unconquered not because it was impossible, but because it had already claimed enough.
All of a sudden I saw a patch of white that wasn't rock and it wasn't snow. And all of a sudden, I'm going to go look over here. And as I started traversing closer to this, I saw what appeared to be the lower part of a leg, and it was a heel.
For nearly a century, one of mountaineering's greatest mysteries remained unsolved. What truly happened to Andrew Sandy Irvine and George Mallory on that fateful day in 1924? The two British climbers vanished into the clouds high on Everest's northeast ridge, chasing the dream of being the first to stand atop the world's highest peak. Did they reach the summit, or did the mountain claim them before they could etch their names into history? Mallory's body was discovered in 1999, frozen in time at 855 meters, 26 out of 155 feet. His skin ghostly white after decades in the ice. Irvine, the younger and lesser-known partner, remained missing, leaving a void that fueled speculation, theories, and endless searches. Many believed he held the missing camera that could prove whether they had summited before perishing. Others assumed he was buried deep beneath Everest's icy grip, never to be found. Then, in October 2024, a discovery shook the mountaineering world. A National Geographic team, including filmmaker and climber Jimmy Chin, was exploring the frozen expanse of the central Rongbuk Glacier when something caught their eyes. A single, weathered boot. Its cracked leather clung to the sole, steel hobnails glinting faintly in the sun. The team knew instantly they had stumbled upon something extraordinary. As they drew closer, the truth became undeniable. Inside the boot was a foot, frozen, lifeless, preserved by Everest's merciless cold. I lifted up the sock, Chin recalled, voice trembling, and there's a red label with A.C. Irvine stitched into it. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then chaos erupted. The team shouted, ran in circles, hearts racing. They had just uncovered the remains of a man lost to history for 100 years. Irvine had finally been found. The implications were staggering. For decades, climbers and historians debated what happened to Mallory and Irvine. Had they reached the summit before their deaths? Had Irvine, carrying the camera that could hold the truth, been lost in the shifting ice all these years? Now, at last, there was an answer, at least part of one. The discovery brought bittersweet closure for Irvine's family. His great-niece, Julie Summers, who had spent years piecing together his story, felt the weight of finality settle over her. "It's an object that belonged to him and has a bit of him in it," she said of the boot. "It tells the story about what probably happened." Summers believes Irvine's body was carried down by avalanches, trapped beneath the glacier's slow, relentless movement. DNA testing will confirm the remains' identity, but the message is already clear. After a century of silence, Everest has begun to yield its secrets. Yet one question still lingers in the frigid air. Did they reach the summit? Or does Everest still guard the final, elusive piece of the puzzle? The frigid winds howled like restless ghosts through the jagged peaks of Mount Everest, rattling ice and snow as if the mountain itself were alive. Ngimi Tenji Sherpa stood on the icy slopes of the Khumbu icefall, his pack pressing heavily against his back, yet his face, weathered, strong, unreadable, betrayed no hint of strain. To anyone watching, he seemed untouchable, a man forged in the crucible of the Himalayas. He had done this before. At 38, Ngimi was no ordinary climber. A veteran Sherpa, he had summited Everest multiple times, guiding others safely to the top while risking his own life with every step. He knew the mountain's moods, its subtle warnings, its hidden dangers. The Himalayas were his home, their vast, frozen expanse as familiar to him as the streets of his village. He understood the icefall's deadly beauty, the treacherous dance of shifting seracs and yawning crevasses. And yet, Everest does not care how many times you have bested it. It was April 14th, 2022. Another expedition, another climb. Ngimi's mission was routine: carry supplies to Camp 2. Alongside a dozen fellow Sherpas from International Mountain Guides, IMG, he moved through the deadly Khumbu icefall with the practiced precision of someone who had been here countless times before. Ahead lay the football field, a relatively stable stretch at 1710 to 1999 feet. Compared to the chaotic maze of ice towers and gaping crevasses elsewhere, it was a fleeting moment of reprieve, a chance to catch one's breath before entering the more unpredictable terrain beyond. But Everest gives no reprieves. Somewhere along the ascent, it struck. A sudden wave of nausea crashed over him. His chest tightened. Breaths that had once been steady now came shallow and ragged. Panic crept in like an uninvited guest. Something was very, very wrong. Ngimi pressed forward, forcing his legs to obey. He had carried heavier loads, faced harsher conditions, survived storms and near misses, but now his vision blurred. His legs wobbled beneath him. The pack that once felt routine now pressed against him like a weight too heavy to bear. His body was failing. Desperate, Ngimi stopped. He scanned the ice field for his fellow climbers, but the vast expanse was empty. He was alone. The nausea intensified. His breathing became erratic. The world spun around him. Every attempt to push forward was met with collapse. His only choice now was to wait. He sank to the ice, still strapped into his pack, hoping that a few moments of rest would restore his strength. They did not. The cold crept into his bones. His vision dimmed to a gray haze, fingers numbed to uselessness. The wind roared, drowning out all sound except the faint, distant rhythm of his failing heart. He sat in silence, swallowed by the vastness around him, while the mountain remained indifferent, towering and eternal. When rescuers reached him at 4 a.m., he was still upright, backpack secured to his body as if he had simply chosen to rest. His face was peaceful, almost serene, as though he had drifted quietly into sleep. Everest had claimed another. No falls, no avalanches, no trauma. Only the silent, invisible killer that takes the best prepared, most experienced climbers. High-altitude sickness. The irony was cruel. A Sherpa, a guardian of the mountain, taken by the very force he had spent his life mastering. A third of all Everest deaths belong to Nepali guides and porters, the unsung heroes who carry the weight of other people's dreams, often at the cost of their own lives. Their courage is unmatched, their sacrifice is largely invisible, yet their names rarely make headlines. Ngimi Tenji Sherpa was now among them. His life, like the lives of so many others, was a reminder of both human bravery and human fragility. His story is more than a statistic. It is a warning, a meditation on mortality, and a tribute to those who dedicate their lives to the mountain. Everest is not a prize to be conquered. It is a force to be survived, one that gives no quarter, shows no mercy, and spares no one, regardless of skill, experience, or devotion. And for every climber who dreams of standing atop its summit, Ngimi's fate whispers a caution. The mountain will always demand respect, and sometimes even that is not enough.